It's going live over on YouTube. Looks like we're live now on YouTube as well. Welcoming you guys. We're getting ready to start my show. It's called Jimmy Rants, and it originates over here on Instagram at Jimmy Rants. So we'll get to the show in here in just a minute. I like to come in a little bit early for you guys just to kind of make sure everything's working well. And starting 3 lives all at the same time is kind of hard. So I do the 2 with you guys. Hello, Bonnie. Over on Facebook and over on YouTube. I always go live with you guys first. That way, when I start the show, I'm looking right at the Instagram feed and I'm ready to go. So appreciate you guys being here today. Got a great show in store. Really interesting study that came out shortly after I left on my short break that I took. It came out like the first or second week of November. And I was like, of course, a big study comes out while I'm gone that I need to totally rant about. So I printed it out. I actually got one of my doctor friends to get me the actual study. So I've got the actual study plus an article about the study to talk about here today. So yeah, lots to get to today. So I can't wait to do that. Hope you guys are doing well. Just a reminder, YouTube, I did bust my iPhone 10. So I'm still using my laptop computer, and I think I like this setup. Hello, Shirley. Hello, Debbie. I like this setup because I can see in real time along the side all of your comments and questions and things that come in. Somebody said yesterday I need to make a super chat, and I looked all over the place trying to figure out what in the world is a super chat. All I know is I see the live chat. I see the video. I do have the microphone right there. So if the sound is pretty good, I'm going to keep this set up. If it's no different or worse, please let me know so I can change it back to the internal microphone. But I think it's actually working pretty good, the Blue Yeti mic that I set up right there. Hello, Kathy from Oregon. Hello, Kathy Queener. Thank you guys for being here as well. So yeah, we're about to start my show, Jimmy Rants. And I am back in the saddle. I came back on Monday. I was quite frankly getting antsy. There were so many things I wanted to talk about, and I don't do well with idle time. Anybody else like that? Like I don't do well just sitting around and having to be in my thoughts. Now, sometimes that's good. And I'm not saying don't do that, but sometimes you just got to get away from it all for a period, but then you come back. And so it was definitely time that I come back. Hello, Beth. Hello, Pam. Hello, Melissa. Thank you guys for being here. Shirley says, definitely look into the super chat. YouTube does take 30%. Oh, it's a monetization. I don't care about the monetization. I mean, that's all well and good and everything, but that's not really of interest to me. You know, maybe I'll look into it, but it's definitely not high on my priority list. But thank you for that, Shirley. I will definitely do some more research about it. And yeah, I mean, if it's a monetization thing, I'm not trying to take your money. I'm just trying to inform. So if you want to throw me money, I'm not going to turn it down, but that's not really the point of what I do on Jimmy Rants. All right, you guys, let's get this show on the road over here on Instagram. And if you guys are ready, I hope you hold on to your seatbelts on this one because we got really bad science I have to expose today. So here we go. And it went goofy on me. Hang on a second. I hit the live and it just didn't go. It went like a blank screen. You gotta love technology sometimes. Okay, I take that back. You don't gotta love technology, but you put up with it because it's a means to an end. And so let me just get it set up one more time. Please go live. I'm a good guy. Here we go. Can eating 1 egg a day lead to type 2 diabetes? A brand new study says so, but what does it really mean? Find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and we go live right here at Jimmy Rants over on Instagram. So if you're not following me, if you're watching somewhere else, the replay on YouTube, on IGTV, wherever you're watching this, and you don't currently follow me over on Instagram, at Jimmy Rants is the username. That's where we go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Like my friend Bonnie just popped in. Thank you for being here, Bonnie, and all the rest of you guys coming in here right now. If you missed the live, we do have a replay for you to watch in various places. So it's up on IGTV over at the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. And then finally, you can get it at jimmyrants.com. That is the official website for this show. And that lets you watch it pretty much on demand. And no matter what happens with all the censorship happening on social media, it will always, always, always be at jimmyrants.com. We created that, by the way, right after my YouTube channel got hacked and deleted last year. I say hacked, it was probably just deleted, but YouTube just deleted my whole channel in August. And I lost every single video I'd ever done in 15 years there, which was a substantial backlist. And so we did a backup at that point. And so that's why we created jimmyrants.com. So you see all the past episodes there. Definitely check that out. But guys, while you're at YouTube, before they take me down at YouTube, just kidding, it's all back again. They did bring it back a few weeks later. But on YouTube, I debuted a brand new podcast a couple weeks ago. With my friend who I see just came in, Brittany Davis, becoming Brittany Lee. And we have a brand new episode today for you to go watch and listen of our brand new podcast. It's called One Step Deeper. So actually, I looked it up, and if you do in quotation marks, One Step Deeper as a search on YouTube, you'll find the show. And it's pretty easy. We had an episode last week all about welcoming the overwhelm, welcoming chaos. Today is about overwhelm and processing overwhelm. And so this time of year is usually when people start to get overwhelmed by all the everything. And so, yeah, go check it out. Brittany and I go really, really deep, thus the name One Step Deeper, on that show, and real excited for you to be exposed to that. But we have a great show in store for you here today on Jimmy Rants, because we are doing something that I love to do. Not a lot of people do this kind of thing where they look at the research and they try to give you, I guess, all the ins and outs of what the research means. And so sometimes research papers come out and people don't really know what to make of them. They just read the headline and they go, oh, okay, I guess that's true. A study said so. And of course, you guys know I go, speaking of one step deeper, I go one step deeper in the analyzation of all of that data, and don't just take headlines or take claims out of a so-called study. I always look at all the ins and outs of the study. So I have a story about this study I'm going to talk about, but I also have the actual study. One of my doctor friends, I think it was Dr. John Lemansky, was able to access that for me so that I could print it out and go over it. But I want to go over the story about the study first, some interesting things in there, quotes in there, and then we'll get into the actual study. But they're claiming, you guys, according to this headline, eating one egg a day increases the risk of developing diabetes by 60%. Study warns. This is in the Daily Mail over in the UK. Eating just one egg a day increases your risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 60%, according to a new study. Now, most people who see that kind of headline go, oh my gosh, I love eggs. I eat more than one egg. So if it's 60% with one egg, then if I have two eggs, is that 120%? Does that mean I'm getting diabetes? And you see the freak outage that happens? And that's by design. They want you to freak out. Design is to put you in a state of fear. But is it true? And you're going to find out, no, it's not. But they manipulate statistics. They do this all the time in research. And when we get into the nitty gritty of the paper itself, I'll explain how they've done that. But let's continue reading in the story. And there's little clues in here that let you know it's bad science. If you follow me and you see me break down studies in past episodes of Jimmy Rants, you know the telltale signs that are out there that it's a bad study. So let's see if you notice. I'm going to point them out as we get along. Australian researchers who studied a sample of 8,545 Chinese adults found a positive correlation between higher egg consumption and higher blood sugar levels. Okay, stop. What's your first clue that this is bad science? That's right. It's a lot of people, because good science doesn't have 8,545 people. Good science would be a randomized controlled clinical trial. They didn't have 8,545 people because that study would cost trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars for them to conduct. They looked at a sample, meaning, and we'll get into it here in a minute, they looked at basically a representative sample from people that like self-reported that, oh yeah, I eat eggs. I eat 1 egg a day. And that's kind of how they do it. And then they found a correlation between higher egg consumption and higher blood sugar levels. Is eggs the only thing they eat the whole day? No, they eat a lot of other things. And when you look at nutritional health studies, this is the one pet peeve that Jimmy Moore has. When they look at nutritional health studies, they put the blame on one thing, but then you go, well, what else did you eat with that one thing? They do this with red meat all the time. Well, red meat causes all-cause mortality and increases the risk of cancer. But then you see they ate French fries, they ate the bun, they drank a Coca-Cola, but my God, it has to be that red meat. You see how they do that. So they're doing a correlation, but correlation is not causation, as you have heard many times before. Previous studies have indicated that eating eggs can actually keep diabetes at bay. That's because they do. Like anybody with a brain, and I don't put it past researchers to not have a brain, anybody with a brain would know that something that contains fat and protein in the absence of carbohydrate is not going to actually impact your blood sugar in a negative way. I created this very popular kind of hack that people have used. I was the one that created it. You may have heard of the egg fast. So back in 2008 or 9, somewhere in there, I decided to go 30 days of just eating eggs cooked in butter. I allowed cheese on the eggs, but that was all you were allowed to eat the whole day. And so eat as many as you want to satiety, blah, blah, blah. And so now everybody's like, oh my gosh, like this egg fast is amazing. And I got credited for it because I did come up with it. And in fact, Women's World Magazine, I think, did an article about it a couple of years ago. They tracked me down as the originator of it, but everybody seems to do it. I should write a book about the egg fast now, but eggs, which I get in my backyard, by the way. Here's one from one of my backyard chickens, and you can see all the little spottedness all over it. That is a real backyard chicken egg, and I love my girls back there. But eggs are so benign when it comes to your blood sugar. Eggs don't have any negative impact on blood sugar, on insulin, on inflammation markers. I mean, it's probably the world's perfect food. People will say, if you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Ribeye steak would be number 1, and number 2 would be eggs. As long as I had unlimited access to backyard chicken eggs, I could literally eat them all the time if that's what I had to do. But now they're trying to vilify it. And if you just joined us, we're going over a study that claims eating one egg, one singular beautiful egg, 1 egg a day will increase your risk of diabetes by 60%. And I'm going, no, because it doesn't. This new research suggests regular consumption of an egg a day, which, by the way, an egg a day, when my girls are laying at their full potential and I get probably 7 or 8 a day, guess how many I eat a day? 7 or 8 a day. So it's kind of funny. They want to make it seem like 1 egg is causing all these dastardly problems. And those of you that watch me and you eat keto or carnivore, how many eggs do you eat? It's more than 1, right? Like I think they go to that extreme of, 1 egg a day increases by 60% to make you pause on eating eggs. Don't doubt me on this one. That's the whole purpose of this kind of study. The new research suggests regular consumption of an egg a day, whether you boil it, scramble it, poach it, or fry it. makes you more prone to the condition of diabetes, which occurs when a person's blood sugar level is too high. How many people have consumed eggs and your blood sugar went up? Anybody? Just ate eggs. Maybe you cooked it in butter. Maybe you had some cheese on top. But how many saw your blood sugar spike from eating eggs? Anybody? Going once, going twice? Yeah, nobody has an increase of significance when it comes to your blood sugar when you eat an egg or eat eggs. It just doesn't happen. And yet they're pretending like this is the great problem. Let's see. Anything else in breakfast food that would spike people's blood sugar? Cereal, oatmeal, fruit, orange juice. I could go down the line, you guys. Bagels, muffins, honey bun. I can think of so many other things that would spike your blood sugar that is a so-called breakfast food. Biscuits, gravy, that's truly spike your blood sugar. Not an egg. Not an egg at all. Where are they coming from with this? So they go into an explanation of what type 1 and type 2 diabetes is. I don't need to tell you that. Diet is a known and modifiable factor that contributes to the onset of type 2 diabetes. So understanding the range of dietary factors that might impact the growing prevalence of the disease is important, according to the lead study author, Dr. Ming Lee at the University of South Australia. While the association, that is a key word. They're not linking eggs to higher blood sugar to diabetes. It's just an association that they're trying to make that leap of. While the association between eating eggs and diabetes is often debated, no, it is never debated. Who is debating that eggs causes diabetes? Anyone other than vegans? I know vegans have I'm trying to think of the word that describes them, but they're just very myopic in their thinking that all the health problems of our day go back to animal food. So other than vegans, which is less than 3% of the population, who is making an argument that eating eggs in any way, shape, form, or fashion is leading to diabetes? Exactly nobody. And actually, most people are just ambivalent towards it. They just eat eggs and they don't worry about it. But those of us in the know, those of us that follow this, eggs don't cause diabetes, not even close. This study has aimed to assess people's long-term egg consumption and their risk of developing diabetes. The study specifically focused on people in China, which has undergone a transition away from a traditional diet comprising grains and vegetables to more of a processed diet that includes great amounts of meat, snacks, and eggs, according to Dr. Lee. Did you catch that? They just identified what the big change is. So these are Chinese people and their eating habits. They have shifted away from their traditional diet and they've now embraced a more processed diet. Processed foods is what they should be. The headline should say, processed food increases the risk of developing diabetes by 60%. I would be behind that because that would be an accurate title. Not one egg a day. You guys seeing the hypocrisy here? This is why you don't always read the headline. You got to get into the nitty gritty. And even in the story itself, they're telling you a more processed foods diet. But then they go on to list meat and eggs with those processed. And this is a tactic they have done for a very long time. They have always equated sugar and processed flour and meat and animal foods all in the same breath. One of these things just doesn't belong here. Like, they're not the same. It's kind of like when they lump all fats together. Whoa, fat is blah, blah, blah. And no, it's saturated fat is healthy. Monounsaturated fat is healthy. It's the seed oils that are incredibly unhealthy. And so you can't just lump all fats together. You can't just lump processed foods, which what meats are processed? I mean, there's processed, don't get me wrong, but they're trying to lump steak and hamburger and chicken and all the rest in there. Eggs, this backyard chicken egg from a beautiful animal that I know where this came from. It just got laid yesterday by one of my girls in my backyard. This thing right here, they're saying is somehow unhealthy, and that if I ate this one big egg, it would lead to a 60% increase in diabetes? Come on. Does anybody really, really believe that? I don't think so. From 1991 to 2009, the number of people eating eggs in China nearly doubled. Oh my gosh. From 16 grams in 1991 to 93, 6 grams 2000 to 2004, 31 grams in 2009. I'm trying to do an imagine of how many eggs that would be. Let's just say it has doubled since 1991 to 2009, which is the data point that they looked at for this study. But who cares? I mean, what is that, going from 1 egg to 2 eggs? Like, it's not a big move. Diabetes responsible for $760 billion in health expenditure in 2019, 10% of the global total spent on healthcare, which again, if they're trying to claim that eggs is the reason why we have nearly $1 trillion in health expenses due to diabetes, they're idiots. Like, anybody with a brain, anybody paying attention to nutritional health science, anybody looking at the biology of how things work, where's a CGM, does all the testing, you're going to see exactly what raises blood sugar. It ain't eggs. It's not meat. It's processed carbohydrates and even the so-called healthy whole grains. How they don't see this, or the willful ignorance of it all, trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, is the most disgusting part of this. For the study, Dr. Lee and her team analyzed data. Keep in mind, they're analyzing data. They didn't look at one single person. They didn't test one single person's blood sugar. It wasn't about that for them. It was about looking at some data that they had on 8,545 adults who attended the China Health and Nutrition Survey from 1991 to 2009. So nearly 20 years, they had these people come into this China Health and Nutrition, or did this survey, China Health and Nutrition Survey. China Health and Nutrition Survey is an ongoing survey backed by the U.S. government's Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So the CDC helps to run this operation. It aims to examine the effects of the health policies and nutrition in China. Did you know the CDC had this operation in China like that? And I wonder, that's a long time. So 20 years, 8,545. Alexa, what is 8,545 divided by 18?
8,545 divided by 18 is approximately 474.7222.
So 474 people a year. They basically had just over one person a day take this survey over that 18-year period. One person a day. And of course, they're not saying here how they got that. Maybe in the study itself, they'll get into that. But was it just a diet recall? What have you eaten over the past year? Because we know how those recall things go. Can you name, maybe you guys can, because if you're like me, you're very monolithic in the way you eat eggs and meat, and it's the totality pretty much of my diet. And so these people have to kind of recall what it is that they ate. Could you do it? Have you ever asked? I don't know. Then they get into fasting blood sugar. They say here that less than 100 milligrams per deciliter is normal, which is true. It's a little bit on the high end if it's 100, but 100, we'll go with that. Fasting sugar of 100 to 125 is pre-diabetic, and then 126 and higher on 2 separate tests is diabetes. Participants had their egg consumption habits recorded while diabetes was diagnosed based on a fasting blood sugar test in 2009. High long-term egg consumption greater than 38 grams per day increased the risk of diabetes among Chinese adults by around 25%. How do they parse out it's just the eggs? They're eating more than just eggs. I don't get it. But adults who ate more than 50 grams or equivalent to 1 egg per day had an increased risk of diabetes by 60%. Okay, there it is. So they just identified One egg is 50 grams. They're eating less than one egg a day in that culture, according to this study. But if they ate more than 50 grams, equivalent to one egg per day, had an increased risk of diabetes by 60%. Okay, a lot to unpack here. Increased risk of diabetes by 60%. That sounds like a lot, right? Well, that's what's called relative risk. So the people that ate less than 50 grams, which is less than one egg, the people that ate less than that could have a risk of type 2 diabetes of, say, 3%. I'm just making up a number, okay? But then when they have 50 grams or more, which is equivalent to one egg per day, it went up by 60%. Well, it's relative to that 3. So what would 60% of that be? It would go from 3% to 5%. Do you see how that works? So you then go from a 3% chance of diabetes under one egg a day to 5% chance of diabetes with eating the one egg a day. That makes sense? And so the relative change between that 3% to 5% is actually 66% increase. So for them to come up with a 60% increased risk of diabetes, it sounds like a big number. It's not a big number. You still don't have that big of a chance of getting type 2 diabetes from eating eggs, even if this was true. And it's not, because they're not looking at all the other foods. Do you see how science can manipulate diabetes if they regularly have eggs? Yeah, let's tell women who are of childbearing age to stop eating eggs. Did you know eggs have so much nutrition in them that are good for women trying to get pregnant? It's disgusting that they would tell women, oh, women especially, you need to avoid regularly eating eggs. Why? There's no evidence for that. Dr. Lee said more research is needed to explore causal relationships. Oh, you think, Dr. Lee? Really? You think we need more research? Yeah, because your bogus research isn't telling us much. Whether they can prove egg eating is the cause of diabetes. It would be easy to prove. Do a randomized controlled trial, get 100 women for that matter, and bring in a boatload of chicken eggs. Go get a backyard chicken guy, load you up with as many eggs, and have them only eat eggs cooked in butter, maybe give them some cheese, and that's all they eat every day for a period of time. So is that a month? 3 months? But do it. Have them all wear a continuous glucose monitor, track their markers at various places at baseline, then again at 2 weeks, then again at 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And that way you kind of get what's happening with their blood sugar, their insulin, their inflammation markers. This would not be a hard thing to study. And more research is needed to explore causal relationships. You would very easily see there is no cause and effect with eggs. And it would be more than one egg. They would be having, in a day, a woman of average size could easily eat 12 to 14 eggs in a day, and should. To beat diabetes, we need a multifaceted approach that not only encompasses research, but also a clear set of guidelines to help inform and guide the public, according to Dr. Lee. This study is one step towards that long-term goal. No, this study convolutes the issue. We need to get off of this idea that eggs, and I see Dan the Bacon Man came in over at the Facebook page. Dan did an experiment just eating bacon for a period of time. All you ate, Dan, was bacon. And you proved you could lose weight and you could feel great and all the things got better in your health. Well, in this study, they're claiming eating one egg a day is going to lead to the development of type 2 diabetes and increased risk of 60%, and that women especially need to avoid them. It doesn't make sense. And it can be easily replicated. So this whole idea, we're trying to find, the best approach that encompasses research. They need to be doing the research if they're this concerned. Here's the thing. These kind of researchers, they hide behind their observational research. They hide behind it. Well, we know better than everybody else. They don't want to do the hard research. It would not be an expensive one either. Eggs are dirt cheap. You just got to get 100 volunteers to come in. And in fact, I would urge you to get 100 volunteers, put and randomize double-blind placebo them. 50 of them have only eat eggs for 3 months, or however long you want to do the study. Only eat eggs. And then the other 50 of them, give them a kind of processed foods diet. Okay. And you could even throw in 1 egg, just or less than an egg a day, or no eggs, just to kind of prove the point that eggs don't really have a thing. But give them a processed food diet compared to an egg only diet. Which do you think, you guys, is going to have the better outcome when it comes to blood sugar? I mean, is this debatable? Are we really at the point where we think eggs are going to spike blood sugar and processed food, snacks, and things like that are not? This is ridiculous, but this is what passes for science these days. Testing men, they found that those who ate a daily egg had a certain lipid profile in their blood, which is common among men who never developed a disease. So they're claiming your cholesterol goes up if you eat eggs if you're a guy. I could go on and on about cholesterol, but we'll move on. However, the authors from the University of East Finland admitted the link between the two factors was still unclear. In 2015, researchers from the same university found that egg consumption was associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, as well as lower blood glucose levels. This is the problem, you guys. This is why the mainstream average people out here that just kind of casually observe things, we get dizzy by the eggs are good, no eggs are bad, bacon is good, no bacon is bad, red meat is good, no red meat is bad, whoa, 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 whoa. And they keep us totally confused. It's why when there is a study, I always say gravitate to the randomized controlled trials and look at those, and all the rest of them, take them with a grain of salt until they do a randomized controlled trial of that thing that they're proposing and theorizing in a study. Because an observational study, which is what this was, doesn't really tell you a whole lot about anything that's applicable to you. If you make a diet change based on an observational study, you're a friggin' idiot. If you make a diet change based on a randomized controlled trial, then that's certainly something worth exploring if you want to do it. But don't think that you have to change anything, even with a randomized controlled trial. They're just this is what happened to those people in the study. It's one of my problems on the internet when there's people that they make a claim, even just like bloggers and things like that. They make a claim and they do an experiment and people are like, oh my gosh, that's going to happen in me. No, you don't know what's going to happen in you until you yourself do your own N=1, meaning study of self, of whatever that thing is. So if you doubt this paper or you're believing it and you want to challenge it, put on a CGM, pull out your blood glucose monitor, and simply do the test yourself. It's not hard. And here's the test. If you want to do this at home, I propose you go out and get a whole bunch of dozens of eggs. And I say you do this for 1 week. I would love to see a lot of you guys try this. For 1 week, commit yourself that all you're going to eat the entire day is eggs. I'll let you cook it in butter, lard, coconut oil, pick your oil, just not vegetable oils. But eat eggs, as many as you want during the day. I think the most I ate when I did my egg fast back over a decade ago, I think was 16. That was the most I could eat in a day. And that was a lot of eggs, don't get me wrong. And so go get you eggs. Eat as many as you want. Cook them in butter. Don't count calories. Just eat just eggs cooked in butter. If you want to throw some cheese on it, that's fine. But test your blood sugar. And I would say get a CGM. And if you want to do it for 2 weeks, that's fine because the CGM goes for 2 weeks. But test it. Test it at home. And I want to know who of you, if you do this experiment, I want to know, did you have a spike in your blood glucose? I don't think anybody that's just eating eggs is ever going to see a spike in your blood glucose. Even when I have 8 eggs cooked in butter and some cheese on top, I think the most I've ever seen my blood sugar go up from that was 15. And some of that is out of the control of the food. I was a little bit stressed, and so that's raising the blood sugar a little bit as well. So do the experiment. It's easy. They could easily do that. And researchers at their own university already showed that blood sugar goes down when you eat eggs. It's associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes because of that. Jyrki Virtanen, adjunct professor of nutritional epidemiology at the University of Eastern Finland, said there was little previous scientific evidence either way on eggs and diabetes. No, we've got pretty good evidence across the board. Look up the research. It's out there. Eating eggs is benign when it comes to your blood sugar and insulin levels. It is. It's possible that heavy egg consumption raises the risk of developing diabetes for people who don't have it. No, I don't see how any way, shape, form, or fashion consuming eggs can lead to type 2 diabetes. Because if all you're eating is eggs, it's not happening. Now, if you have eggs and you cook them in margarine and you have a slice or two of toast a day and you drink orange juice and you did this kind of thing regularly, will you develop type 2 diabetes? Yeah, I think you might. But will it have been the eggs that did it, or will it be all the other things? And that's the problem. They're identifying one thing, but that's not the only thing they ate. They ate lots of other things. So then they get into how eggs have 187 milligrams cholesterol. Official guidelines say that you need to have no more than 200 milligrams. That's bogus because dietary cholesterol is not harmful. In fact, the 2015 dietary guidelines for Americans clearly stated that cholesterol in your diet is no longer a nutrient of concern. Go look it up. They put it clearly in there. So we don't have limits on cholesterol anymore. It's not a nutrient of concern because people always thought, oh, if you eat cholesterol, it raises your blood cholesterol. No, it does not. If you eat cholesterol, your body will downregulate the endogenous production of cholesterol. And if you don't eat enough cholesterol, it will raise it in your body because there's essential functions for that cholesterol in the body. They pretend like if you eat cholesterol, that whatever your normal level is in your blood, it's going to be added on top of that. And that's where they think you have trouble. It's just not true. Eggs are also high in protein, about 7 grams per egg, which our body turns to glucose and we consume too much of it. Wow. They certainly do not understand the function of amino acids if that's what they think happens. The American Diabetes Association, meanwhile, recommends people who already have diabetes that they need to be eating eggs. Yeah, the American Diabetes Association finally got woke when it came to understanding the value of a carbohydrate-restricted diet and eating foods that are natural in fat and protein, which eggs do qualify. Each egg contains about 0.5 gram of carbohydrate, which in theory will keep your blood sugar in check. Not in theory, it keeps your blood sugar in check. Like, is anybody feeling like you're in the twilight zone hearing about this study? So that's the article on the study. Let's get into the study itself. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time because I did kind of explain what it was in there. But this was published in a very prestigious journal in the UK, British Journal of Nutrition. So this is a pretty big deal. And it was, like I said, that Ming Li, Zumin Shi, and Yu Wang. They are the researchers, it looks like, out of Australia, also the China and Qatar. Those are where the three different researchers are from. The research paper is called Higher Egg Consumption Associated with Increased Risk of Diabetes in Chinese Adults, Chinese Health and Nutrition Survey. I love it that they put it right there in the title of their paper, associated. And I need to remind you, in science, association is not causation. Association means, okay, we're seeing somewhat of a link that when we see this, this happens. So therefore, that is a theory to write out so that we can do a randomized control clinical trial of that thing. So if you want to see if 1 egg a day, and I would go for broke, I'd say, okay, let's do my experiment. Let's let people eat ad libitum eggs. Have as many of these bad boys as you want. If you're a woman, that's probably about 12 to 14. If you're a guy, that could be somewhere from 14 to 20 eggs a day. And let's see what just eating eggs does. It's not going to raise your blood sugar. It's not going to raise your insulin. It's not going to raise your inflammation levels. It's going to be nothing but good. But guys, they don't want to do that study. The gig will be up if they do that study. And what I want to know is, why hasn't that study been done by some researcher? Now, the question could become, well, ethically, we can't just have people just eat eggs. That's not ethical. There's no way people could just survive on eggs. You want to bet? I did it for a period of time. Dan the Bacon Man did it just bacon for a period of time. A lot of us eat mostly red meat and do carnivore. We're still alive and kicking. We got no problems with our health. So what's the big deal? And then it's a matter of getting one of these journals to publish the study, which I told you the other day, British Medical Journal is about the only one that really shows no bias when it comes to the research. They allow pretty much anything. So this was in the British Journal of Nutrition. I wonder if an alternative outlet for someone doing the study I'm proposing could be published in the British Medical Journal. That would be huge as a response to this bogus study. All right, so we already went through all the methodology and the results of what they got in the study. Let's see if there's anything new in here. Continuous effects have been made to study the impact of egg consumption on the risk of diabetes, since eggs have become a common food in the last 3 decades. Let's stop there. What other foods have become common in the past 3 decades? Okay, great. Like they used to eat just under 1 egg a day, and now they're eating 1 egg a day. What else changed in there? We know that processed foods, westernized foods, have made their way into China. Why aren't we looking at those? Oh, maybe we're getting money behind the scenes at these research labs from said companies, right? And so if that's happening, they're going to do everything they can to divert attention away from themselves. Tomorrow, I have an article to read to you all about how Coca-Cola did exactly that. Coca-Cola tried to shift attention away from their own product for obesity by basically paying for these conferences, these public health conferences to take place. And so they squelched a lot of their own culpability in the obesity epidemic by spending money. And so did the processed food companies say, hey, Yu Wang, Ming Li, and Zuman Shi, go do this study that makes eggs look bad? Like, are you seeing that there's this all-out assault on real food? Guys, real food is not the problem when it comes to diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and all the rest. Real whole foods like eggs, meat, butter, they're not the problem. It's the processed foods. And there's too much influence behind the scene that no doubt these researchers, and let's see if it's in the back here. If they say they acknowledge the researchers use data from the China Health and Nutrition Study, blah, blah, blah. They thank the National Institute of Nutrition and Food Safety. The research received no specific grant from any funding agency, commercial or not-for-profit. But that doesn't mean they got no, and they have no conflicts of interest. That doesn't mean that they got no money whatsoever. I don't believe that. I don't believe with a straight face you publish this kind of data without getting some kind of, hey, if you do this, we'll give you a boatload of money kind of grant. You know it happened. So let's stop pretending like this is some great study that came out, oh my gosh, wow, what an ethical study. No, this is a highly unethical study to tell people that eating eggs is going to raise your blood sugar when empirical, my own eyeballs, I wear CGMs all the time, I test my blood sugar all the time, you guys do it too, and you don't see a spike when you only eat eggs. I can't underscore this enough. If you just tease out the food that they're claiming is the culprit, you're not going to see a problem. But let's look at all those other foods that brought in the last 3 decades. Let's look at all those other common foods and let's test your blood sugar on those things. And I think you're going to see a far different result. All right, let's see, because they're just repeating a lot of the things that I said earlier. Okay, so the study, I'm trying to see if in the study itself they did anything. So they looked at people over the age of 18. They had to do at least one nutrition survey from 1991 to 2009. They were followed up for 18 years to see if they developed diabetes. And let's see. The primary outcome was diabetes in 2009. So when they started back in 1991, those first people, they followed them the entire time. And their only purpose in following them is, are you going to develop type 2 diabetes? Fasting blood was taken early in the morning, prepared for further tests in a natural center lab in Beijing. Remember, this is from that pool that they got from the China Health and Nutrition Survey. Fasting plasma glucose was measured with an enzymatic photometric test. That's standard. All the measurements and tests were collected using all the standard protocol. The detailed data collection protocol was described elsewhere. At each round of the survey, listen to this, individual dietary intake data were collected by a trained investigator conducting a 24-hour dietary recall of the last 3 days. So at least they only had them do the last 3 days rather than the last year. Besides foods and condiments in the home inventory, foods purchased from markets and picked up from gardens and food waste were weighed and recorded by the interviewers at the beginning and end of the 3-day survey period. At the household level, all the foods consumed during the survey period were weighed and assigned to each household member. Food consumption data was converted to nutrient intake using the Chinese food composition table. Egg consumption in the present study, including the egg group in the Chinese food composition table. So listen to this. It was all kinds of things. There were chicken eggs, duck eggs, goose eggs, quail eggs, and foods that had eggs in them. It's that last one that got me. Foods that have eggs in them. So if you put an egg in a cake recipe, oh, you ate an egg. Is an egg all you consumed in that cake? No. You had sugar, you had flour, you had probably bad fats. You guys seeing why I'm so skeptical of this study? We calculated the mean intake of the eggs during 1991 to 2009 to reduce variation within individuals and to represent long-term habitual intake. For example, if the egg consumption of a participant was XYZ in 1991, 93, and 2009, the mean egg intake and the corresponding command would have to match up. Okay. Scientific gobbledygook. Yes, my friend Kat says meringue, get rid of all the fat and added sugar, but it's still an egg. Yeah, they would count that, Kat. It contains eggs. I'm trying to think, what else would they have that would contain egg? Cake was the big one, though, that immediately came to mind. You put an egg in cake. Pancakes, I guess, you'd use eggs. Or French toast. If you had French toast, that would contain eggs. But is it eggs? No, not just eggs. All right, so covariates. They looked at socio-demographic and lifestyle factors collected at the survey. Things like what their education level was, their family income, urbanization levels, height, weight, blood pressure were measured at each round. Overweight, obesity was defined as over 25 BMI. Hypertension was defined as 140 over 90 above that. Physical activity level was estimated based on self-reported activities like their occupation, transportation, leisure time, physical activity, and during using a compendium of physical activity. Smoking and alcohol drinking status were categorized as yes or no. Mean fruit and vegetable consumption from the corresponding food groups, energy and macronutrients during 1991 to 2009 were also calculated. It is highly likely that egg consumption is an indicator of a certain dietary pattern. To separate the effect of eggs from the overall dietary pattern, the dietary pattern was adjusted as a confounding factor. In the analyses, we adjusted for two dietary patterns, traditional and modern dietary pattern, which were identified by factor analysis using the standard principal component analysis method. The traditional pattern was highly loaded with rice, meat, and vegetables, while the modern pattern had loads of fast food, milk, eggs, and deep fried food. So you're hearing what else is with that egg diet? Fast food. Any impact on your blood sugar? Milk. Milk has higher lactose than heavy cream and other lower carbohydrate-based dairy. Milk, and especially if you got like fat-free or low-fat milk, those are even higher in carbohydrate. Deep fried foods, which deep fried is in bad oils, number one, and then it's breaded, and then they throw eggs in there with it. So is it the eggs, or is it the fast food, milk, and deep fried foods? Like, are you getting the picture here that they're looking at the wrong thing? Implausible low or high energy intake per day was excluded to minimize reporting error. They had somebody eat over 5,000 calories. They excluded that. Or what was the other one? They had one that ate 500 calories. They also excluded that. All right, so let's see. Egg consumption trend was categorized using the TRAJ command. The association between egg intake, egg consumption trend, and diabetes was assessed using what's called a logistic regression model. A set of models was built, blah, blah, blah. I think, I could show you the graph, but I think it's irrelevant because we've already seen there's a confounding variable here. The confounding variable, and Kat makes another salient point, eggs go with the breading for the deep frying. Yes, that's where the egg comes in. Wasn't the egg, it was the deep frying of the bread. But you're already seeing the flaw in this study. They didn't just isolate eggs. So how do you come to a conclusion that it's the egg? All right, so I'm going to skip because I've already told you the results of what they're seeing. I want to see their discussion of this because that's going to be interesting. The egg consumption per capita in the sample increased from 16 in 1991, 16 grams, up to, I think it said 32 by 2009. The data indicated egg consumption in Chinese adults was lower than Europe and America, but higher than the rest of Asia with regard to egg consumption. Most of the participants, 93%, with the low or medium baseline intake, increased their consumption during the study. Only 7% of the adults with the highest baseline egg consumption decreased, but remained higher than the others. During the study, the per capita gross domestic product increased in China dramatically, while the egg price increased slowly and the rice price doubled, pork price nearly quadrupled. So the affordability of eggs might be a factor that drove increased egg consumption in most of the study population. Well, see, here's what's getting me. They're making a big deal about going from like a half an egg to an egg. An egg? Like an egg. Like they would be shocked if they came to America and looked at all of us carnivore people and how many eggs we eat. An egg? I think they're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. We found in this prospective study that higher long-term egg consumption increased the risk of diabetes among Chinese adults by about 25%. The positive association was further confirmed by using consumption trend analysis, indicating higher egg consumption, whether increased or decreased during the study, predicted elevated risk of diabetes, specifically habitual intake of one egg today, increasing the risk of diabetes by 60%, as compared with those with a quarter of an egg per day. The result was generally consistent with a meta-analysis of other cohort studies, blah, 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 blah. This doesn't pass the smell test because we're not just looking at eggs. I'm trying to think of an analogy that would kind of hammer this home. Just imagine at a job that you did all of this work. Okay. You were the one that accomplished all these things. You did it all. But then this one person came in and said, well, can I help you with them? Oh, yeah, you can help me. Come on, you can do this and this. And then they do those things and they get recognized as the reason why things went south or something went bad. And would it be fair to that one person? Because all the other things were done by me, but then that person comes in as one little effect, and yet they want to make that person the culprit. That's exactly what they've done to eggs here. They have made eggs the culprit, the bad boy in the diet, simply because they don't want to look at all those other things and admit that they're having an impact. It's disgusting. But this kind of stuff happens in science a lot. I've been hammering science over the past year because I'm seeing this increase. It's almost like they have they've been emboldened to do this kind of really bad science. And if we don't call it out like I do here on Jimmy Rants, how's it ever going to get fixed? Potential mechanisms. Oh, this ought to be good. Underlying the egg and diabetes association have been investigated. Oh, this is going to be good. Egg white hydrolysate could promote adipocyte differentiation via insulin mimetic and sensitizing actions and glucodase inhibitory action, therefore inhibiting the hydrolysis of dietary carbohydrates and preventing their absorption. Okay, they're trying to impress you with a lot of big words. That is a smokescreen. They're trying to pretend like that there are insulinogenic effects in the egg whites, but they're neglecting one very convenient factor that matters. When you just eat egg white, maybe those things kick in. But you don't just eat an egg white. You eat egg white with the yolk. And the yolk mitigates a lot of those effects that they just talked about. Choline from egg yolk could be transformed by gut microbiome to nitric oxide, which increases LDL oxidation, promotes inflammation, which then is the pathogenesis of diabetes. So you see how they're stretching? They're doing all they can to think that one egg in your diet is going to cause all of that massive downregulation and things happening in your body. Grasping at straws, if you ask me. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first study conducted in a large sample in the Chinese adults to investigate this longitudinal association between long-term egg consumption and diabetes in a follow-up of 18 years. The use of mean intake from 91 to 2009 from the 3-day dietary intake in combination with household food inventory provides a robust estimate of long-term habitual egg intake. No, it doesn't. You still need to do the randomized controlled trial. Until you do that, this really shows nothing. Let's see. Limitations of the study. So let's see what they think were the limitations. I've already identified many of them. Firstly, the blood sample was only available in 2009. In 91 and 93, the history of diabetes was not asked. The self-reported during 1997-2006 was less than 2%, which was very low, exaggerated the association with egg consumption. Therefore, baseline self-reported diabetes was not included in the analysis. That's interesting because earlier they had 25,000 in the study, but they only ended up with that 8,000 or whatever at the beginning, 8,545. But they had 25,000 people originally. Well, they excluded a bunch of people because they didn't self-report when they got diabetes diagnosis. Secondly, food intake was assessed using 3-day, 24-hour recall method. Seasonal variation was not considered. So they only did that maybe once in a year. Well, they did it, say, in the spring, but then they ate differently in the summer and differently in the fall and differently in the winter. Do you see how that would skew the results? And they're admitting that. Thirdly, there was no information on any kind of family history of diabetes. So any family history of diabetes would have been relevant in this. That, yeah, we know about epigenetics. You can express the genes differently through changes in diet and lifestyle. but they didn't even ask them if they had a family history of heart disease, diabetes. I always say heart disease because diabetes, heart disease, cancer, obesity, they're all basically the same disease. It's the disease of insulin resistance. Fourthly, the loss to follow up was high because of the dynamic open cohort study design. They had 20,741 participants attending at least one, 10,495 participants attending at least 3 nutrition surveys. Only 8,545 or 6,224 participants had blood glucose recorded back at the original start of the study in 2000. Finally, residual confounding is possibly due to the lack of ethnicity, cooking method, diabetes-related biomarkers, although comprehensive factors were adjusted for the present study. Further, well-controlled investigators of the impact of egg consumption on diabetes are warranted. They missed a huge flaw in the study. The limitation is they jumped to the conclusion that the things that they saw in these people's blood sugar was related to the egg consumption and not all those other things, which they admitted in the study. Fast food, milk, deep fried foods, those were all part of that diet, which helps to contribute to diabetes. And yet they identified one egg as the causal factor in increasing diabetes risk. This is why you've got to go beyond the headline of studies. So they conclude the egg consumption of Chinese adults increased during the study period and that higher egg consumption was associated with a higher risk of diabetes. With the same amount of intake, women were at increased risk of diabetes than men. Dietary guidelines for the Chinese population should be evidence-based, and a healthy diet incorporating egg consumption should be promoted. And you would think, the way this reads, you would think it was paid for by vegans, because vegans are the only ones I'm aware of that think eggs are anything but healthy. What they call them chicken periods, I think is what the vegan community calls eggs. But it's yet another example, you guys, of how this kind of research gets into publications and people see the headline and they go, oh my gosh, I eat lots of eggs and one egg increases my risk of diabetes. I better stop eating eggs. If that's you, don't you dare stop eating eggs. Do the study yourself. It's not hard. If all they tested was blood sugar, you can test your blood sugar. Everybody has access to glucometers. They're easy to get. If you can get one of these continuous glucose monitors to stick into your arm, that's the way to do it as well. This is a CGM, Freestyle Libre. See if your doctor will prescribe you one. And yeah, put it in your arm and see what happens when you only eat eggs. If you isolate just eating eggs, cooked in butter, maybe a little bit of cheese, I guarantee you, I would be shocked if anybody saw a 25 plus point spike in your blood sugar. I don't care how many eggs you eat. You could eat 10 at a time. And when I eat eggs, when my girls are laying hot and heavy back there, I'm eating about 7 to 8 eggs a day for breakfast. And so pretty easy to get that in. And I've never had any issues with my blood sugar. In fact, quite the opposite. My blood sugar stays pretty stable in the 70s and 80s pretty much all the time. And let's say if I start at 80 for my blood sugar, 1 hour after eating 8 eggs cooked in butter with some cheese on top, it might be 87. That's it. And then within an hour after that, it's back to 80 again, maybe in 70s. Like, let's don't make a big deal about eggs, because eggs are pretty much God's perfect food. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to come here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And just a reminder, for those of you not watching on Instagram, I have a brand new Instagram page. Jimmy Rants is the username. Go look it up there. And we go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Kat has the first question. Everything I can think. Sure it can, because you're not putting enough of good in your body. Yeah. Too little egg, too much crap, and up the eggs go down on. You put some emojis in there, and I'm trying to read through what you meant by that. It's out of context too. Stacy says, what else are they eating? Yeah, exactly. Seems like the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But Stacy, this is what they do in studies. They want to look at an egg and say one egg causes an increased risk of diabetes, but then they don't want to admit what else are they eating with the eggs. It matters. We can't pretend like what they eat besides eggs doesn't matter. And it's the same with the red meat studies. Almost all of them, red meat causes blah, 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 blah. And you go, well, they didn't just eat red meat. They had a bun, they had fries, they had Coke. Oh, that doesn't matter. It's the red meat. No. Bonnie says, was this paid for by a vegan organization? You would think. I don't know. I didn't see. They said they didn't have any associations or conflicts of interest that paid for this. Joshua said they shouldn't be able to make a single statement if they are going to say more research is needed or the result is unclear. Yeah, oh, they do that all the time, Joshua. That's pretty part and parcel of how these things work, is when they do an observational study, not a randomized controlled trial, because that is the additional research. Other people can try to replicate a randomized controlled trial, but that is the research. But when you do an observational study, it's always going to be more research is needed. Back up those statements with facts. I agree with you, but that doesn't happen in these kinds of studies. Kat says, I did an unintentional egg fast during pregnancy. It was all I could stomach for a while. My A1C went down to 4.6. Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's a clear sign your blood sugar was doing just fine. Was that egg in the form of sweets? They're huge fans of pastries in China. Meringues, yeah, for sure. I wonder if the 8,000 left were the unhealthy ones with health concerns. That's another one. That's a good way to think about it, Joshua. It's kind of what Ansel Keys did with his 26 country study that he whittled down to 7 because the 7 fit his agenda. That's a good point. Kat says, this is a prime example of shitty science. I don't disagree, Kat. That's why I wanted to bring it to today here on Jimmy Rants. Paul Check calls scientists the prostitutes of the modern world. Well, Joshua, they need funding, and they will sell their soul to the devil to get funding. And it's unfortunate because I don't think that does the public any good service at all. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here now to my Facebook page. What's up, Facebook? See what you got going on here. Tanja says the title alone would make me say, what the heck, and where the heck would they get that crap? Yeah. Debbie says they're at it again. Fear-mongering. We eat about 2 to 4 eggs a day. Tanya says, I can't even believe this was even written or published or validated in any way. Please let me know how we can question them. It kills me. Well, we question it by exposing it. That's what I did here today on Jimmy Rants. You're now informed about this study so that when people say, oh, did you hear eating 1 egg a day increases your risk of diabetes? You could go, oh, actually, and then kind of articulate some of the points I talked about here. How about the rice that they eat? Really? Ugh, I can't even with this study. Exactly. Dan the Bacon Man chimes in. They do so many studies simply looking for the answers that they want to find. It's sad, confirms their own bias every time. And that's unfortunate. There are entire groups on Facebook based all on the egg fast you created. Cool. We can save our own grain of salt and eat it with some eggs. That would be a better use. Yes, yes, yes. Debbie says, does anyone feel like the CDC's goal is to get people sick so that they can push pharmaceuticals on the world? Same thing the tobacco companies did. Well, that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day, Debbie, but I'm with you on that one. Tanya says, oh my God, are they kidding? They actually admitted to have included all of those other foods and still chose to waste time pointing the finger at eggs. Yeah, they sure did. First study done like this because eggs causing diabetes isn't worth the study. How is this even taken as a hypothesis? Ugh, you're killing me, Smalls. You need your own show, Tanya, because you are hilarious. I love it. Marcella says, my ex-mother-in-law was type 2 diabetes and vegan. She had terrible uncontrolled diabetes, eventually died of complications from it. My current mother-in-law and her 90-year-old mother live in France where they eat eggs, butter, and cheese. They go skiing in the in the mountains, very healthy. Yeah. I had a very healthy keto pregnancy, not bad for age 46. That's awesome, Marcella. All right. You hit my buttons with this one, Tanya said. You need to start your own show, Tanya. I would watch Tanya Rants. Let's see, what's something that let's see, Tanya Titillates. How about that? So that'd be a fun show. All right. Thank you, Facebook. Let's pop over here now to my YouTube channel. What's up, YouTube? Let me scroll back to the top here. You should be full-blown diabetic after doing that 30-day egg fast. Yeah, exactly. I remember your conversation with Dr. Eads, which I think gave you the inspiration. Yes, it was the inspiration. Dr. Michael Eads, probably in 2008 was when I talked to him. And yeah, that's right. Good memory, Paul. That's exactly what it was. The guy who ate a dozen or more a day in a nursing home. Exactly. I did. He did. He inspired me a lot. It's all about the money, says Beth. I wish it wasn't that cut and dry, but it's that cut and dry. I think you're exactly right. Carrie says it's like Groundhog Day with all these researchers. Like, really? We're doing this again? Exactly. Like, this has been pretty much the story of my career in the nutritional health space, is we see them make claims and then we challenge it, but then they make the same claims and we challenge it. It's like all the vegan propaganda films. They basically have the same claims in every film and they never change. And it's like, no, new research has basically updated what you're claiming now, but they don't want to hear it. Izzy says, love me some Jimmy Rants. Well, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Greener Pastures, obviously it's a vegan experiment. Well, I wouldn't put it past the vegans having something to do with this. Craig says the one thing they forgot to mention in the study, it was one Cadbury egg a day. That's creative, Craig. I will give you bonus points for creativity. He said the egg that he ate in a day was a Cadbury egg. That would lead to diabetes, by the way. You got me on that one. That's a good way to end this show. But guys, like when you get these kind of headlines and people will confront you, oh my gosh, you eat that keto, that carnivore thing. Don't you eat a lot of eggs? And they'll point to this study. You can now say, yeah, there is a study that came out, but here's what's wrong with it. And that's what I try to do here for you on Jimmy Rants. And that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. Go follow me over here on Instagram. I am at Jimmy Rants, all one word. And yeah, we go here Monday through Friday. And we try to at 11 a.m. Eastern time so that you can get this kind of information about studies. So definitely go follow me there. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay over at the Jimmy Rants Instagram page on IGTV. So it will go up right here just as soon as this is over. You can also access it over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. I will remind you over on YouTube to go check out my brand new podcast that I created with my friend Brittany Davis called One Step Deeper. So put in quotation marks, One Step Deeper. You'll find that. Today we released episode 2. It's a mindset podcast. It's all about processing overwhelm, I think is the title we put on it. And we go deep, guys. If you love deep podcasts, both of us were craving having that kind of podcast. So I was like, why don't we do it? So we started that last week. Go watch that episode. Finally, pop on over to JimmyRants.com. All the past episodes are listed there. And until next time, until next time, tomorrow, I will want to tell you what we're doing. Coca-Cola also is in a study tomorrow, and there was a study that determined that they had an effort to shift the blame for obesity away from their company, and it was exposed. It was found out. So I'm going to give you all the details about this. This came out earlier in the month. So we'll get all of that out there. And then Friday, of course, is Ask Me Anything. So be sure to come back. Jimmy Rants, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We will see you guys again tomorrow. Bye. All right. Right. All right. You hit my buttons. Yes. I try to do that. That's one of my specialties is hitting buttons. All right, guys, let me pop off of here for now. Thank you guys for joining me. And yeah, I love being back. Thank you for having me back. And I got lots in store for you guys in the coming weeks and months and hopefully years. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. All right, YouTube. Thank you, Shirley. If you could give me any feedback, is the sound good? Because literally, like if I brought this microphone really close to my mouth, the sound would be really good. And I wish I could come this close, but it would look kind of weird on the video. I know this sound, just having done many podcasts with this particular microphone. I know this one sounds good. I know if I'm talking directly into it. Can you hear the difference when I'm talking on the microphone, like really close? But it's probably better than the internal microphone that's on the computer. So if I was just doing a show with you guys and nowhere else, I could probably do this. But I don't think this back here is bad. I mean, I project. So when I talk, I actually project my voice pretty well. And so I think that helps with the sound, but it's better than if I unplug this. Because if I unplugged it, then yeah, you would notice the difference. So, all right, let me pop off of here. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow too. Bye.